Welcome to Compliance Clips, your transportation insight hub. I'm Rick Morgan. Please join me and my co-host, the effervescent John Farquhar, as we share our expertise and that of our guests to help you navigate the road towards improved safety, compliance, and profitability.
Hey, make sure you guys stick around to the end of this video. We've got some really good information that Rick and I put together, mostly Rick, but we put some stuff together and it's going to be very helpful for you to make sure you've got a program in place in how to respond in this type of incident, as well as how to respond to the media. Don't miss out.
And thanks to John, how to prevent this type of scenario by understanding what to do when you're doing an OD. And I'm not talking about an overdose. I'm talking about an overdimensional.
Oh, is that what it was? I never knew that. Yeah.
Well, we don't want to confuse the audience.
Make sure you like and subscribe.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Compliance Clips with your co-hosts, Rick Morgan and myself, John Farquhar. Today, we've got no guest.
What did you do to him?
You know what? I think I might have scared him off, or her. I'm not sure. But we didn't. So, you know what? I thought this would be a great day. Let's just banter back and forth.
I actually heard that the rumors got out that you don't want to be on Compliance Clips because it's hard to keep a straight face.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And no one actually believes that you know what you're talking about if you spend half of your time laughing.
Laughing, true. Yes, exactly. Well, you can't take yourself too seriously, just the topic. So
kind of like some of the news articles that we've seen recently.
Oh man, isn't it interesting what we're seeing popping up out there, for crying out loud?
Well, it's it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of like all at the same time.
Head in your hand going, are you kidding me? He said that? And it's in print now.
So for those who aren't from that really small little enclave of Brantford, Ontario, what could we possibly be referring to, John?
Oh, the famous Wayne Gretzky Parkway Bridge over the 403. What more could you ask for than fame and fortune of the bridge that keeps getting hit?
I was going to say that's a regular dinger, that one.
It is. Dinger.
That's like if you live in the area, it seems to be like once a week someone's kind of ka-ding, ka-ding. Yeah. It's not quite as bad as going up the 400 and seeing all those signatures on the downslope at the edges. Yeah. But yeah, it's got hit regularly, and there was lanes there that were shut down for about 6 months, if I remember. I was living in the area at the time because somebody had hit it so hard. Yeah.
Well,
so what happened this time?
And then you get lanes on top of the bridge that get shut down, right? That are close to the edge of the bridge. They move the traffic inward so they can take some stress off, and you've got to shut down lanes. You got to bring out engineers. So now you're bringing up man lifts. These guys are out there looking, checking, and finding out. And then, reinforcements get put into play. And it's funny. They have not replaced that bridge yet. They fix it. They put it back to snuff again. But, and it's not that it's low. It's not that it's a low bridge. It's to standard height. I believe it's just over 14 feet. So it's not a problem, and it's not drive ends and reefers that are hitting it. It's oversized loads, and more than normal permitted loads, or loads that maybe should be permitted and you didn't measure, or. So.
Or what we did see was with a couple of them was where people were using the incorrect method of transportation. They're calling a tilt and load tow truck for a small excavator or whatever, because from a weight perspective and a price perspective, it's doable and the price looks great.
Right.
Only, it's a little higher than the traditional.
Can't get that whole arm down or something like that, or somebody didn't measure the cab height and realize, well, hang on, there's an air conditioning unit on top of the cab, and so.
Right. So in this particular instance, then we had a situation where an experienced flatbed hauler picked up an excavator.
Yep.
Had their permits, and what was it? I believe he said. They got to do something about that bridge because we had a permit and we went through lots of other ones and we didn't have a problem. I'm not quite sure that you want to say that, particularly when it subsequently comes to light that the driver was suspended at the time.
Yes, he had a suspended license at the time. That's correct. Yeah.
And the license was suspended for non-payment of fines.
Yep, exactly.
So, this always raises the question about how are carriers meant to ensure that they don't have a driver who gets into a suspended license. In this particular case, the gentleman or person who was interviewed said that the driver had received a ticket that hadn't been paid for, and it was maybe in the mail. So, I'm inferring possibly that related to our last conversation with Joel, maybe this individual got a ticket as a result of a speeding camera, speed enforcement camera, and hadn't necessarily arrived at his house yet, or maybe it had, and you just hadn't quite got around to paying it yet.
Right, exactly.
So, in your role as you're going in and you're talking with carriers, it's a frequent question for me. I assume it is for you. What do you recommend for make sure that you're staying on top of this stuff, guys?
Well, I guess one of the things, my background is in open deck transportation. So, step decks, double drops, flatbeds and whatnot. And, I guess one of the big things that's important is, can you read the permit that you have? Now, in Ontario, what is interesting is you can purchase a blanket permit, which is good for an annual basis, right? So it could be for construction equipment, farm equipment, whatever it be. We used to have them for all our trucks, so we didn't have to buy individual permits. Now, it gave you up to a certain width, a certain length, a certain height, and a certain weight, all right? And it was based on your vehicle. That permit was attached to that vehicle. So yes, it gives you a blanket permit, but you still have to measure the commodity that's on your trailer to know that does it fit within this permit, right? And it is still your responsibility to make sure that the route you're going to travel fits within the parameters and the provisions of this permit, right? And if you hit something, well, it's still your responsibility because the permit is only good for certain routes. Now, as an example, King's highways. So the 400 series highways, QEWs, 403s, 401s, and whatnot, blanket permit is good for all those highways. So, but we know going up the 400, there are some bridges on the sides where, hang on, that's much lower than what you are. You need to be moving over into the middle, or maybe even take the left lane to get through that, under that bridge. That is still your responsibility to know that, So when it comes to overdimensional, you can't just rely on the fact, I got a permit. I don't know what the problem is. They need to fix the bridge. No, you need to fix your eyes and read the permit. Make sure.
And your drivers
exactly
need to be aware of the maximum height that you can have your equipment.
Yes. Well, and I wonder how many drivers know what the dimensions are on this blanket permit, right? Mm-hmm. And even if you get a specialized permit for a particular move and it's made for that, that permit's created for that trip and route and whatnot, how many drivers actually read the permit? A lot of times it comes into the company, dispatch, operations, safety, whoever hands it to the driver and says, oh, by the way, here's your permit, you're good to go, and might refer to, here's the routes you're going to take. But did he actually read the permit and go, oh, hang on, I'm only good for 14 feet tall? Well, that device out there's 14 foot too. Yeah, you'll be all right. Or, no, hang on, you told us it was 14. Or the customer told us it would be 14. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, maybe that was the case on a different trailer, but it's not the same trailer. Or maybe it's a little higher than it should be because you haven't collapsed that piece of equipment, or you've put dunnage under it and raised it 4 inches higher than it should be. It should be sitting flat on the deck. All these things need to be known when you're working with the client, getting ready to load the device, and the driver needs to be instrumental in that conversation so that they know, like a piece of equipment, off-road equipment, like an excavator, a bulldozer or whatnot. Even having a piece of equipment like that you would drive onto your trailer, if the tracks are full of mud, that mud gets caught in the tracks and now it gets on the trailer, you could raise the height of that machine by 2 inches just from having mud.
And that can be all the difference.
It can be all the difference. Instead of skimming, now we're going to go smack.
And I think, listening to this particular incident in Brantford, that was about the distance because apparently, they went under the bridge and they had some damages to the hoses. And those are the questions, of course, or the situations, of course, that you really like to explain to your customer. I've got your $200,000+ piece of equipment, and I'm sorry, but you won't be able to use it tomorrow the way you were planning on because we've skimmed the bridge. But I think the other thing to be aware of, particularly the way highways are now, is we have almost daily closures of one stretch of highway or another.
Yes.
And that means a diversion if you're not sitting there,
right,
stuck. But if you are able to make a diversion because you're aware of it, or the police are redirecting you, and you're moving an overdimensional, you got to know what you got, because where you're going ain't where you thought.
Exactly.
So to speak.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is, you're not in violation of that permit when you're going off route when you are directed by a law enforcement officer.
Exactly. But they're not going to tell you that the bridge.
No, he's not going to tell you there's a 13-foot bridge up there.
13.6.
Yeah, exactly. You need to know that. You need to be aware of that and go, I can't go that way. You need to direct me another way. So, but so you have to be prepared for the unexpected by all means and know your surroundings and where you're going. I think that's one of the things that really I enjoyed most when I drove truck was I had this great big book that would open up and a map and you'd plan your route. It was called an atlas. Yeah. That's it. Yes, a map book.
There's an app for that now, right?
Yeah, but
unfortunately it doesn't tell us this, right?
Doesn't give you the big picture, right? It just says go from here to there, right? And that's a problem. And we have apps that are available for heavy commercial vehicles. You have to be diligent though, and you have to.
We're going to date ourselves.
Well, we got PC Miler, but Rand McNally is a great one.
Yeah.
And Garmin also puts one out that is specific to heavy commercial motor vehicles. So you can put in the dimensions of your vehicle, and it can go, hang on, you can't go this way.
Yeah. And your map will actually have little red marks on it when you're trying to map the route. You say, okay, you got to get off here, or you got to go here, or you can't take that road there.
Yep.
All of these things which were designed for the trucking industry as opposed to being just the result of somebody driving a little car with a camera on the top and saying this is a route.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So we've been actually talking about the issue of driver disqualification and when a driver gets suspended. And there's so many reasons for which they can get suspended. It's been a long time since I've been in the industry, but I remember at one point in the past when I had a driver, he actually got his license suspended for failure to pay family support.
Yes. Yep.
And these are things that don't come to the attention of the carrier unless you've got some kind of proactive measures in place.
Right.
So, the Ministry of Ontario, and I'll put a link to this into the site when we're doing the editing later. The Ministry of Ontario does actually provide a free license check verification website where you can upload up to 10 at a time, and they'll even give you the template document. If you run that once a month just to look at your drivers and make sure that everything's good, the likelihood is you're going to minimize that because your drivers aren't going to get suspended for failure to pay a ticket in a week.
Right.
But in a month, they may, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the other thing that carriers need to consider is as you're doing your processes and you're building your programs, you need to take into account that activity that occurs in the private motor vehicle that may not come to your attention because it doesn't show up anywhere that you're regularly looking at, such as your CVOR or your SMS, can have an impact on their qualifications. And getting a driver abstract is $12. Now, $12 isn't a lot, unless you have a couple of hundred drivers. If you start pulling a couple of hundred abstracts every 30 days or 60 days, it does add up. We're very cost conscious right now, so we've got to figure out ways to manage this. If you pull their personal CVOR, it's only $5, but it doesn't have their personal activities. So you want to develop and consider having your drivers report on a document when they have something that occurs in their personal vehicle.
Yep.
And all right, folks, that's a 15-minute mark, and we try very hard to keep everything at 15 minutes because we know how busy you are. Please join us next week when we pick up where we leave off here and we start getting deeper into this conversation on how to manage your driver qualifications, prevent having a driver drive while suspended, and we dig deeper into the whole aspect of overdimensionals, bridges, and quality management practices for your drivers and your company. And as John said, please don't forget to subscribe. Click that button, click the likes, and you'll be sure to get some freebies at the end of part 2. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you next time. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We hope you found today's materials to be useful and you can put them to work. And if you've got questions from today's material, or maybe you're just looking to improve your safety and compliance game, please feel free to reach out to either me or John. And remember, you can't manage what you don't monitor. The key to compliant profitability is just one phone call away. So until next time, put the phone down while you drive and keep your eyes on the prize.